This episode is sponsored by Kinsta. Between juggling client meetings, managing your website, and keeping up with everyday tasks, who has the time to stress out about website security? Well, with Kinsta, the technical stuff is taken care of, so you can focus on what you do best. Kinsta provides managed hosting for WordPress, offering lightning-fast load times, top-tier security, and unmatched human-only customer support. Whether you're a business owner, web developer, or running a digital agency, Kinsta makes managing your website easy and efficient. Kinsta provides enterprise-grade security, being one of the few hosting providers for WordPress with SOC 2 and other certifications, guaranteeing the highest level of security for your website. Thanks to their unlimited free expert-led migrations, Kinsta ensures a smooth transition for you from other hosting providers. Customers have reported 200% faster load times post-migration to their platform. What I find cool about Kinsta is their fast and reliable customer service and premium features that are included at no extra cost. Ready to experience Kinsta's hosting for yourself? Get your first month free when you sign up at kinsta.com today. That's KINSTA.com.
I can actually recall I was driving to a handball tournament. So, these things always happen when you're in the car, right? Or on vacation or whatnot. And actually, I know the customer. It was ClickFunnels. And little did I know how big they were. The software did what it was supposed to do, but at the same time, I think it was probably running off of a VM, a single VM with a single database all on the same VM. I got a call from Micah and he's like, the servers keep going down. And of course, I'm in the car. This is annoying. So this was definitely a big failure on me. But what I discovered was also, I had a database connection leak. My name is Josh Ho. I'm the founder and CEO of Referral Rock.
This is Code Story, a podcast bringing you interviews with tech visionaries.
Spent 6 months moonlighting.
There's nothing at the back end.
Who share what it takes to change an industry.
I don't exactly know what to do
took
next.
many goes to get right.
Who built the teams that have their back.
The company is its people.
The teams help each other achieve. I was proud of our team.
Keeping scalability top of mind.
All that infrastructure was
Yes, we've been fighting it as we grow.
Total waste of time. The stories you don't read in the headlines.
It's not an easy thing to achieve, mind
Took it off the shelf and dusted it off and tried it again.
To ride the ups and downs of the startup life.
You need to really want it. Not just about technology.
All this and more on Code Story. I'm your host, Noah Lappart, and today how Josh Ho has built referral software done right, end-to-end and for all businesses.
This episode is sponsored by Speakeasy. Grow your API user adoption and improve engineering velocity with friction-free integration experiences. With Speakeasy's platform, you can now automatically generate SDKs in 10 languages and Terraform providers in minutes. Visit speakeasy.com/codestory and generate your first SDK for free. This message is sponsored by QA Wolf. QA Wolf gets engineering teams to 80% automated end-to-end test coverage and helps them ship 5 times faster by reducing QA cycles from hours to minutes. With over 100 5-star reviews on G2 and customer testimonials from SalesLoft, Drata, and AutoTrader, you're in good hands. Join the Wolfpack at QAWolf.com. Josh Ho was into tech at a young age. In high school, which was around the time of bulletin boards and AOL Online, he had to code a way to connect Windows to the internet using TCP/IP. But outside of tech, he is married with a family. He notes that because he is into tech, people perceive him to be younger in age. He plays handball and has been into the sport since he was younger. Prior to his current venture, Josh had a SaaS product he attempted to launch that didn't work out. While he was getting his car worked on at a dealership, he noticed patrons being referred to salesmen in real time. And he started to think, who manages this sort of thing for other businesses? This is the creation story of Referral Rock.
Referral Rock is a SaaS, so it's in the MarTech space. We essentially have a way for businesses to run referral programs. So think your normal Uber and Lyft type of referral program, or even your mom and pop, like, hey, I just got great service from that roofing company, and I put in my name and a friend's name, and hopefully they'll get $500 off and maybe they'll send me a gift card. We help facilitate that for pretty much any business. This was 2014. I had a SaaS before that didn't work out. I raised funding before that didn't work out. So I was on the hunt for an idea. And at this point in time in my life, I was like doing a little bit of software consulting, and I happened to be sitting at a car dealership, getting some coffee, waiting for some car service to happen. You know, as you kind of sit there and you just people watch a little bit, and I saw a person come in to the dealership, and they went right to one of the dealers and one of the salespeople and basically introduced themselves and said, "Oh, hey, a friend of mine, Joey, sent me, and they said to talk to you." You saw the confusion glaze over the eyes of the salesperson, you know, for like a half second. And then they kind of snapped into sales mode. And they're like, "Oh, yeah. Like, I knew you were coming by. Like, let me show you that new Civic," or whatever happened. While I was sitting there, that kind of sparked the idea. And I'm like, I see this referral thing happening IRL, right? And I see these programs from PayPal and all these other ones online, all these e-commerce things. But who does it for the car dealership? Who does it for a yoga studio? Who does it for all these local businesses that, you know, maybe haven't fully done a digital adoption or whatnot? At that point, I did a quick Google search, didn't really find anything, kind of found the normal types of programs that you see now, but I was like, who's focusing on that? So I didn't really know it at the time, but it sort of was a immediate sort of positioning out of the gate that I discovered as like, and it was one of the first taglines I kind of put on the website, which was referral software for any business, not just e-commerce, because it's like people would search for that type of thing. And I actually got a reasonable amount of traffic by just having that right there as the headline, because it immediately showed we were different.
Let's dive into the MVP, so that first version of Referral Rock. How long did it take you to build, and what sort of tools were you using to bring it to life?
So I have a software background in kind of a .NET stack, an older aging part. So it was like form-based and whatnot. And I never got kind of really into sort of the MVC model types of stuff. And when I probably finished school was when I got into coding and whatnot, you know, in the early 2000s. So I kind of rode the Microsoft train, you know, .NET and all of that type of things. And that was my stack, right? Like I knew how to scale databases. I knew how to do that. I worked for other companies and built a lot of, you know, software for those. So at that point in time, as much as it was aging in that day, there was not as much JavaScript stuff. There was not as much, you know, maybe jQuery was like just starting up and some of those other things. At that point in time, I'm like, I know my stack. I'm going to build it in my stack because I can get there faster. As much as I was enthralled by other technologies, you know, Ruby on Rails, other things were coming up. But I'm like, you know what? The fastest point for me to get this launched is using my own stack. But with that, you also have your own kind of cache of code. And I would say I had some from previous projects. I had other ways of like doing multi-tenant websites, right? So I had like some bare essence of take an XML or a resource file and map that to essentially output to a separate DNS address and, you know, populate a website just based off of like a template. That was already code I kind of had. And I was like, oh, how can I kind of jerry-rig this into getting a first MVP to get businesses to try? The first version of the software was essentially me taking, I think it was SurveyMonkey at the time. So anyone that was interested in the software, I sent them a survey, and essentially it was the admin form, like upload your logo. What would your referral offer be? You know, how would you describe it? Like, what's the website you want them to go to after a person clicks? What is really the backbone or essence of like a referral program? I just asked them in a form. I took those survey results. You know, I had, let's say, I think maybe around 50 or so when I wanted to do the MVP. And I took those, kind of built a little transform into the resource files that I was used to, had a template, and was able to, you know, populate those sites without building an admin interface, with just doing some minor tweaks to some previous code. So it enabled me to get an MVP up and running pretty quickly once I found some users and kind of put it out there.
I'm curious about what you would consider the most impactful decision or trade-off you had to make in that MVP. And you kind of touched on some at a high level. Maybe dive into one and how you went through that decision-making process and how you coped with the decision.
I wouldn't think there was a lot of like tough decision making in kind of making it happen. And again, this is 10 years or so later, so it's maybe I did struggle on some of those areas. But zooming out this far, it's hard to remember the exact struggles. But the thing I would say that was the most challenging part was sort of like, where did I go next within that MVP? Once I did have it out there, it was like, now what do I do? It never really got that far before. In past ideas, there were like prototypes and there were other little things and you had some other users. But that was probably the most angst I had. I was sort of like, okay, people are using it. Now what? And that became the early parts of like asking for money. And then that fear of, if I'm asking for money, I gotta stop using it. And now, boom, I just lost all my users that I was working hard to get. I don't want to scare people off. It's all of those sort of anxiety baked into like, there seems to be some traction here. I haven't gotten this far before with this type of software. And now what do I do?
This episode is sponsored by AMI. Have you ever wondered why your work laptop has a little barcode sticker on it? Who put it there, and does anyone care if you peel it off? Believe it or not, that little sticker is part of a massively important business of what IT folks call hardware asset management, or HAM for short. Most companies spend thousands of dollars on equipment for employees, but here's the kicker. Most also track this stuff by hand. That's right, another spreadsheet monster hiding in the shadows, taking up your team's time. So how do you fix it? I'm glad you asked. Meet AMI. AMI, or Asset Management International, has been making software to simplify the HAM process for over 20 years. Their automated tools help companies keep tabs on their equipment, from storage to what's on your desk. Their tech generates detailed reports and audits to ensure proper tracking, usage, and recycling of hardware equipment, which means gone are the days of lengthy inventories and misplaced equipment. Want to reduce your daily IT headaches? Head over to AMITracks.com. That's AMITRACKS.com to request a demo today. This episode is sponsored by Speakeasy. Whether you're growing the user adoption of your public API or streamlining internal development, SDKs can turn the chore of API integration into effortless implementation. Unburden your API users from guessing their way around your API while keeping your team focused on your product. Shorten the time to live integration and provide a delightful experience for your customers. With Speakeasy's platform, you can now automatically generate up-to-date, robust, idiomatic SDKs in 10 languages and Terraform providers in just a matter of minutes. SDKs are feature-rich with type safety, auto retries, and pagination. Everything you need to give your API the developer experience it deserves. Deliver a premium API experience without the premium price tag. Visit speakeasy.com/codestory to get started and generate your first SDK for free. This message is sponsored by SnapTrade. Link in user brokerage accounts and build world-class investing experiences with SnapTrade's unified brokerage API. With over $12 billion in connected assets and over 300,000 connected accounts, SnapTrade's API quality and developer experience are second to none. SnapTrade is SOC 2 certified and uses industry-leading security practices. Developers can use the company's official client SDKs to build investing experiences in minutes without the limitations of traditional aggregators. Get started for free today by visiting snaptrade.com/codestory. This episode is sponsored by AMI. Have you ever wondered why your work laptop has a little barcode sticker on it? Who put it there, and does anyone care if you peel it off? Believe it or not, that little sticker is part of a massively important business of what IT folks call hardware asset management, or HAM for short. Most companies spend thousands of dollars on equipment for employees, but here's the kicker. Most also track this stuff by hand. That's right, another spreadsheet monster hiding in the shadows, taking up your team's time. So how do you fix it? I'm glad you asked. Meet AMI. AMI, or Asset Management International, has been making software to simplify the HAM process for over 20 years. Their automated tools help companies keep tabs on their equipment, from storage to what's on your desk. Their tech generates detailed reports and audits to ensure proper tracking, usage, and recycling of hardware equipment, which means Gone are the days of lengthy inventories and misplaced equipment. Want to reduce your daily IT headaches? Head over to AMItracks.com. That's AMITRACKS.com to request a demo today. So then let's go to the now what do I do point. And I'm curious about how you've progressed and matured the product from that point. And I'm also curious about how you went about building your roadmap and what do you do or what process do you follow to decide, okay, this is the next most important thing to build or to address with Referral Rock?
The quick part on getting over that hump was, honestly, I got a bump from a friend who just said, this isn't real until you actually collect money for it. I think you hear a lot of that advice now, but, it was one of those just needing a swift kick in the butt to kind of get moving on that. And cat's out of the bag, it worked at this point. We made it over that hump, and all of a sudden it was sort of like a little bit of a self-propelling mechanism after that. Fortunately for me, at least within the first week of sort of flipping on and saying it's going to start being a paid product, I had one paying customer. And I did some other things within that to just sort of mitigate my own risk. I only reached out to a few of the people that were the most active. And then I also told them it was, happening in like a month, but if they pay now, they can get it cheaper and whatnot. So used a lot of other like my own safety mechanisms to just like test the waters. But early days, even in probably within the first year, of course, my brain goes like, oh, this will be feature complete like in a year or two. And as we probably know with software, it almost never, is the case. Along those roads, the best thing that happened to me was probably I got very in tune with just like, I know that people will say listening to users, but I did it a little differently. So mostly because I did it out of my own, fixing my own pain and annoyance, right? So like within the first year, I was just like annoyed trying to help people over chat. So like, imagine a customer and they're just chatting with you and they're like, oh, how do I do this? Or how do I fix that? My brain that just wanted to make it happen quicker, I was like, can we just get on a call, right? And this is like pre-Zoom days and whatnot. And I think I might have used like a WebEx or one of those types of things. And I, convinced people to just jump on a call just because I'm like, hey, let's make this happen faster. I kind of stumbled myself into inside sales and, what is now called like customer success. But I didn't know it at that time. More people were buying because I was helping them. More people were getting success out of it because I could hear their pain and actually just do little things like, actually, yeah, let me just do that for you. Or, oh, this is a feature that seems interesting. Yeah, that makes sense for a lot more people. You know what? If you buy today, I'll fix that this weekend. Right? So it turned into a quick feedback loop cycle between me and the customers. It's one of those magical mixes where it works well for everyone. If you're willing to go and do the talking and get in front and hear the pain and hopefully just curb your ego a bit, and be willing to kind of put yourself out there a bit more, it paid in spades because then I got much more in touch with the customer, much more understanding of their needs and selling more and also them having more success with the platform. Over time, that loop, which continues today, now I don't do those calls myself anymore, that has a large influence over the roadmap, in addition to just other kind of stepping back and thinking about, where the ball is going. Are these decisions, what is, in my mind, the directionally correct way that I want the software to go? And I think there were times over the years where it very much was playing whack-a-mole and just doing the features customers asked, ending up with, a gobbledygook amount of mess of code to maintain, versions like, oh, you're on V1 Classic and you're on V2, but like, yeah, we're not going to let anyone else on V1 Classic anymore. So we're hoping to sunset them, but we still want them to keep paying. We're going to hopefully not disrupt their usage because referral programs are great because once they set them and forget them, they often, keep doing it. And the last thing a customer wants to do is they don't really care about your new feature. They don't want to go and implement it right away because it doesn't affect their day-to-day. If anything, it gives them more anxiety to change it. So we end up like maintaining a lot of legacy people without inflicting too much change on them. There's definitely some big bumps in there, things like that, where you have to take a step back and you go, no one's going to tell me I have an ugly baby. So like, because of this iterative approach, like, we got long in the tooth on some of the UIs and they started to not look quite as fresh. And going back to even the earlier part of the story, because I had these templates, like I think it was a template initially I bought off of, back in 2015. And so a lot of those bootstrap themes and some of those other code themes that were out there may not have been the most current even when I bought them, but they were like better than I would make for myself. So as you could probably tell, we got long in the tooth pretty quickly over time. And, being in the business for 10 years, you have to make those counterbalances between, when do I make the leap to a new UI UX? Should we modernize? All of those types of things.
Okay, I'm curious about teams. How did you go about building your team? And, what did you look for in those people to indicate that they were the winning horses to join you?
Early on, because I was like a decent generalist at a lot of this from previous SaaS I learned to do SEO and some marketing and some things like that. So, I could do a lot of the things we needed and still to this day sort of like shift and focus on different areas of the team, different areas of the product, whether it's marketing or sales areas, working with that. But the early parts were just trying to find a couple other generalists. And I got super, super lucky early on where when I figured out that this inside sales motion or talking to customers and doing demos over Zoom and whatnot was effective, my time quickly went to zero. I had calls, I had these other things, and I was spending half the time sort of, working with customers or prospects and spending the other time like blocking my calendar so I could like code and make sure the product gets maintained and whatnot. I got super lucky and I actually was the second person. So I tried to hire one salesperson and it went awful. It was totally the wrong fit for both me and for the person. And I was in this like, oh my gosh, my time is getting sucked up by everything. Like, how do I get myself out of this jam? And I got an inbound request from someone on LinkedIn that said, hey, I saw your job posting. I'm a previous founder or a current founder, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing next, but looks like I could help you, right? Like, and had a phone call with him. At that point, I was like at the grocery store hungry. It probably could have been another bad decision on top of the previous one. But I got lucky. And this person now is still with me, and he runs our operations, our sales, our services area, and handles a lot more of like the people in the front line, people we have. He was like a key part. It was like me, him, his name is Micah. And I think I had like a marketing coordinator, admin, part-time sort of remote person. And we've been remote from the start. But that kind of started that piece of the puzzle of like, okay, if I can do product and marketing, who fills in some of these other gaps? Following the bouncing ball of like what we needed to deliver for customers and kind of finding the pieces to fit that puzzle, because it's like, there's a formula here. How can we just check the boxes? And then from a technology perspective, then I hired a developer. I had a developer working directly for me, and he also is still with us as well, which is kind of amazing 10 years later. Since then, I've hired a tech lead who now is like the director of software development. Our team has grown to, I think our whole product team is probably about 10 people. As I stepped back into different ways and created full-time roles for other people, I sort of basically backfilled for myself is how I got there. In the early days, it was more generalists, and it's gotten now to be, more specialists in terms of the types of developers we hire or the types of, sales roles or service roles and admin roles, things like that.
This message is sponsored by QA Wolf. If slow QA processes bottleneck your software engineering team and you're releasing slower because of it, you need a solution. You need QA Wolf. QA Wolf gets engineering teams to 80% automated end-to-end test coverage and helps them ship 5 times faster by reducing QA cycles from hours to minutes. With over 100 5-star reviews on G2 and customer testimonials from SalesLoft, Drata, AutoTrader, and many more, you're in good hands. Ready to ship faster with fewer bugs? Join the Wolf Pack at QAWolf.com to see if they can help you squash the QA bottleneck. Everyone's talking about AI these days, right? It's changing how we work, how we learn, and how we interact with the world at a tremendous pace. It's a gold rush at the frontier, but if we're not careful, we might end up in a heap of trouble.
Red Hat's podcast, Compiler, is diving deep into how AI is reshaping the world we live in. From the ethics of automation to the code behind machine learning, it's breaking down the requirements, capabilities, and implications of using AI. Check out the new season of Compiler, an original podcast from Red Hat. Subscribe now, wherever you get your podcasts. This message is sponsored by SnapTrade. Link in user brokerage accounts and build world-class investing experiences with SnapTrade's unified brokerage API. With over $12 billion in connected assets and over 300,000 connected accounts, SnapTrade's API quality and developer experience are second to none. SnapTrade is SOC 2 certified and uses industry-leading security practices. Developers can use the company's official client SDKs to build investing experiences in minutes without the limitations of traditional aggregators. Get started for free today by visiting snaptrade.com/codestory. Let's flip to scalability then, and this will be interesting. How did you approach scalability, I'd say in the beginning, but also until now? I'm curious about just how you think about scalability. Was the product built to scale from day one, or have there been interesting areas where you had to fight it as you've grown?
It's scaled pretty well on its own. I can actually recall I was driving to a handball tournament. So, these things always happen when you're in the car, right? Or on vacation or whatnot. It's just the amount of times that stuff hits the fan. So I think, and actually I know the customer, it was ClickFunnels, ClickFunnels. So this was super early in their days, and we ran a referral program for them. And little did I know how big they were. This was at that time where it was probably within the first 2 years. The software did what it was supposed to do, but at the same time, I think it was probably running off of a VM, a single VM with a single database all on the same VM. I got a call from Micah, and he's like, "The servers keep going down." And of course, I'm in the car, and I'm like, "Oh, this is annoying." So this was definitely a big failure on me. But what I discovered was also, I had a database connection leak, and of course, pummeled with traffic from ClickFunnels, just very soon all the connection, the connection pools and whatnot just kind of DDoSed ourselves and just kept, going up and down. And of course they kept sending traffic, and then it would just pummel again. So I don't know if we had our tech lead at that time. I don't think so. So it was me in the car, trying to hook up to a mobile hotspot and trying to look at the code and trying to figure out and trying to debug it from there. So there were definitely some pain points, but that was probably the most painful one where I legit was embarrassed. Hindsight, I probably should have known a little better. I didn't do enough scale testing at times, and a couple little non-closed connection loops can do that to you when you get pummeled with traffic. But over time, we sort of just did it kind of piecemeal as needed. And now I was less involved once I had our great tech lead involved, who again is also still with us. And that's another kind of nice thing that I've learned is just the continuity we've had has been an immense advantage, over the course of the whole business. All the people I've mentioned are still with us today, 10 years later. He was immensely helpful because he had much more cloud experience than me. At that point in time, I was I can run it on VMs. I'll run a dedicated, VM as a database server. I'll, run a couple other ones as the web server front ends, and maybe do some cheap load balancing off of one and whatnot. But I personally, in my previous software, had teams to kind of help with more of the infrastructure, but was ultimately responsible for a lot of the code performance. So in my previous experience, got really good at database optimizations and things like that, aside from the connection leak. But that's on a different layer anyway. We moved iteratively, so it went from the VMs to starting to use Azure App Services, having using the cloud-based database infrastructure, and just starting to really bow into a lot of the cloud services. Since we went from VM kind of monolith, we were able to kind of slowly add what we needed. So over the time, it was messaging systems. It was figuring out okay, how does our data look different, right? What are the types of data we need to do different transactions on? We've also rolled in more of the no-code style types of databases for things like, activity logs that customers will need to see. We use a combination of Elastic and some other, steady state storage. We have added sharding a couple years ago. One of the things we're interested in is also looking at, do we do sharding or do we do some level of microservices? How could we look at, different usage patterns, kind of similar to what we did with some of the no-code stuff we did with Elastic, or not no-code, NoSQL stuff. Because we sort of used the technique of doing the sharding, it sort of was like one way to solve the problem is like with a hammer and having, multiple sets of shards versus like, pulling out services that are doing, for example, like CRM syncing and whatnot, or those type of things. So right now, each of those shards handles that, but I am interested on kind of like pulling some of those things out potentially so those could scale differently.
So as you step out on the balcony and you look across all that you've built with Referral Rock, what are you most proud of?
Honestly, like the feedback loop that we've had. So I know I talked about that earlier, but that's probably been the strongest set of things that like I am super excited about where we're going, but I don't know, I always feel that way. So maybe that's part of that feedback loop is because like it's more of like the whole organization and everything is like when I need that type of information, when we're in the season of like planning the next big, features, we have so much data and so many customers to reach out to. We have past transcripts. So like I'm sort of a bit of a pack rat with like, the data. So it's like we have all these recordings. We can go ahead and listen in on those. Our product manager, if anything, if we get to focus or we have an idea, we can quickly suss it out and figure out what is the next evolution of the product. If anything, it's like this whole engine and ecosystem or organization that is built around just like progressively listening and moving forward and taking bets and making bets on where the usage is going to go. And I just feel like we've gotten better and better at that. Over time, you fail and you learn from those and you harden certain beliefs or you gut check them the next time around. So overall, I'm really happy with the way and really proud of the way the whole business kind of like moves in that direction, which keeps me excited about the future. I often get asked as a founder, like, what's the exit scenario? Like, and I'm like, I'm having fun. And until that stops, I don't really think about it. And we're profitable, not wildly profitable, but profitable enough to continue to reinvest, to continue to, at least just maintain a decent lifestyle that I'm fine with. I'm not like need to have all these cars or anything else whatsoever. If anything, I'm just like more excited about what we can do with the product, how it can service the end customers. These SMBs, all these other people that don't have software to lean on or don't have their own tech teams. It's sort of nice being able to fill that gap and see it deliver for customers and kind of be able to paint that roadmap with a high level of confidence.
Let's flip the script a little bit. Tell me about a mistake you made and how you and your team responded to it.
This is like pre-COVID. When we were, as a remote company, we were able to hire generalists that were, it's like a US-based person. Here's a good example. This great US-based person, he actually, went to school for software, but never practiced it like out in industry. So super smart guy, but he also liked to travel. So we found this great guy that essentially could work on our services team and help fill the gaps where, help people implement their referral programs. They often need like JavaScript installed on their website and things like that. And developers kind of take that for granted, or maybe they also know how many times they get hit up, hey, can you just add this JavaScript to the site? Types of things. But we were able to hire probably 2 or 3 people pre-COVID, and they were awesome. They could do the technical stuff. They could do some of the marketing in terms of like helping customers set up their programs. They were these like 3-tool athletes that were amazing. And what happened is once COVID sort of happened and remote became a lot more ubiquitous, that talent had a lot more opportunities than they had before. So we might have groomed them into this like technology type of role. But a lot of them went on to make a lot more money. Great for them in their careers. And I'm happy that we played a part in it. Because of their technical background and the skills they developed, they could be great like sales engineers. They could be great all these other places, all these other people. But we didn't have the unit economics to support them. And the mistake was we kept trying to find them. We kept trying to find these 3-tool athletes again and again. And we butt our heads against that. And I would say people we hired that were not quite that, like maybe couldn't do the technical side of it, it really brought down the company. Our level of service really dropped. So we had these great generalists that could figure out these problems. We didn't have as much documentation because they could always figure it out. Now you get into a phase where we couldn't have as technically strong people, but we kept trying to hire. We kept trying to make that playbook work for probably a year or so. And with multiple hires, like I would say, maybe half a dozen hires trying to fit that mold, the answer was like literally right in front of our face. It was our own tier 2, it was our own tech team. And like it took us 2 years to figure out to create a like tier 2 tech support internally within the company, or at least have a person that really lived in the software side and just get that skill set, purely that one skill set that could help those implementations. And then it freed up, wow, we were able to hire people. They didn't need all 3 skill sets. Maybe they just needed 1 or 2. And it really changed the dynamic of the way we delivered service for the customers. It was a huge stressor that was always around the company, being like, did they get set up correctly? I don't know. We're doing all these other things at the same time. You smack yourself in the head because it was an idea that you could have had working 2 years ago. It was no new technology innovation that created this. It was like a process thing that we were too stubborn to consider, or just it never hit us. Over and over again, it's more of like, can I go out and talk to more people more often to just find out and listen to their situations and understand and come up with more. So for me, the bigger lesson out of any of those is like, my way is one way, right? And hearing all these other ones, but there's a true, like, how can I see around corners by just hearing more stories? Like, I listen to a ton of podcasts, and also I have a podcast as well, so I interview people as well. And oftentimes, like, those nuggets are out there. You just, like, haven't come across them yet. So for me, it was like more of the epiphanies we've had where we ran into problems that we had trouble solving. It just points to me wanting to kind of be out there more, hopefully to see the patterns earlier and not cause as much strife and pain for that long. Maybe it could have been a 6-month thing, maybe it could have been a year versus a 2-year. You could definitely see it in our revenue numbers, like the change in service and the change in sort of whether it's NPS score or just satisfaction and whatnot. But there were some rough years in there. And if you were ever a customer during that time, I'm sorry. But we're much better now. But the stress internally is also so much better now from that.
Okay, so let's move forward then. Tell me what the future looks like for Referral Rock, for the product and for your team.
One of the big things we've been working on that we're excited for the future is like we're on the cusp of being able to release a very much updated admin user interface. We've had iterative steps to get there, but half of the admin interfaces right now are using, like, we moved from that form-based Microsoft.NET types of style to React. And that's been a big move over the course of the past year and a half. Now we have had iterated, there's screens that make those transitions, but we're about to like finally release all the new list views, all the new ways people interact with, kind of the main objects and entities and things like that. And honestly, there's so much research that went into that in terms of simplifying, really understanding, how could we shorten the number of clicks or give them the right interfaces, and all that we've wanted to do in the interface that we knew we had to wait for a next gen, right? It's like doing better filtering in column and dynamic selecting which columns you want on list views, and having drawers pop out of the side, and having it be mobile friendly for people, using even a mobile device to admin or make updates to managing their referrals and things like that. So honestly, that's the biggest thing that is coming in the next probably month or two. But I'm impatient. It's been a long time coming, being through all these interfaces and being in the UI UX reviews for those for the past year. That's the big exciting part. And coming up next, we have a lot of other things that we think are going to really move the needle for us. So again, with all that knowledge within that, our next big one is we've learned to be a lot more prescriptive about our product. It used to come from this more of, as you could tell from before, where I was like, we took a lot of requests, a lot of these nascent features that maybe 5 customers would use, but is sort of buried 5 layers deep. So trying to get the best of both, all these features that we built that are buried, and kind of build a more of a internal app store type of interface. So it's like, hey, instead of having to hierarchically go through and find, this feature, it's now just in a sortable app store. And we also feel like that is a natural interface that people are now very familiar with. So you can get your basics of, setting up your referral program. But if you want to do something a little more, for example, some customers want to do things like they want to approve everyone that joins their referral program. So having more of a request approve model. But most people don't, and we don't advise that as a good thing, but we have it. And it makes sense in some use cases. But that would be a nice thing in the App Store to go ahead and turn that on for my program and edit and do the configuration there versus overloading all of the other interfaces. So I'm really looking forward to kind of simplifying that, because now we can take those steps now that the new interface is almost out and everything is going to be built in React. There's going to be, more of those design patterns that are reusable versus all the bloat and other things. I'm really excited what that can do for the end user, because it's a much cleaner interface, much more findability for some of these random and advanced features, but at the same time keeps it, super clean for anyone new coming in the door.
Josh, let's switch to you. Who influences the way that you work? Name a person or many persons or something you look up to and why.
Many, many people that I don't even talk to. So I would say there definitely are some people I reach out to and talk to. Other founders. Chris Savage is one that I've had on a podcast and also have had multiple conversations with. He's the CEO and founder of Wistia. And so I've made sort of certain relationships over years, over, different people, whether I reached out to them 5 or 6 years ago over just an email question over a blog post that they did, and eventually established, some level of relationship and a rapport with. But like I said, I'm a super avid podcast listener, which I kind of let a lot of the podcasts just help me find other new people, right? So I'm a big listener of Lenny's podcast. So, there's a lot of product management, product design, even sort of software methodology and founder information there. And oftentimes I'll hear of someone there and then dive deep into their podcast, because they might have their own podcast or have written books. And it kind of gets me down these other little rabbit holes. And I feel like having that serendipity around for these types of things, oftentimes I'm workshopping on a problem that we're having or trying to figure out a better way to do something. And more times than not, across maybe 5 or 6 different podcasts I'd regularly listen to, I'll come across a nugget. I'll come across something that hits me at the right time, sends me down a tunnel of being able to better solve, those types of problems. So a recent big one that I've been into is Matt Lerner. He had a book and he was on First Round Capital's In-Depth podcast, which is another one that I really enjoy. Even though it has a VC tilt, I just have to turn my brain off to the VC tilt side of board meetings and fundraising and whatnot. But, there's a lot to learn from kind of everyone in tech or even not in tech. I come across different people, go down a rabbit hole, might read their book, might throw it into some LLMs to sort of create my virtual advisor groups with different people. I've done a little bit of that, which has been sort of fun in the AI age. But yeah, I kind of have my ear out to listen to as much as I'm interested. And the challenge is I'm interested in a lot of different things. But it often hits me at the right time with great serendipity with something I'm working on. So.
Okay, Josh, last question. So you're getting on a plane and you're sitting next to a young entrepreneur who's built the next big thing. They're jazzed about it. They can't wait to show it off to the world, and can't wait to show it off to you right there on the plane. What advice do you give that person, having gone down this road a bit?
It's acting as if this is going to be successful, but also making sure you're just doing the reps for the sake of that you enjoy doing those reps. It comes from a couple of different places where I've realized how many things that for founders, your own anxiety or level of confidence is mostly because you really haven't seen that show before. Like I said, back in the early parts, I got to that point of the business and I needed that kick in the butt over. At that point in time, if I had this mentality that, okay, I'm going to be successful or this will all work out in some way, shape, or form that is good for me. Maybe that type of advice would have gotten me over the hump, but also knowing that every one of these reps is going to just help build my level of confidence and build my own history and level of okay, I've seen parts of this show before in some way, shape, or form. All those reps will help you kind of build that confidence and even that sense of pointing yourself in the direction and assuming it's going to work out okay gives you at least the level of confidence to sort of take those steps and not necessarily be overly worried about those. Because I think there are plenty of times I've done that, and that's helped me make decisions because I'm like, well, actually, you know what? I was super anxious that waiting for leads to just drop off and the business to go to zero. But when you do that for 2 years, you're like, okay, actually, that's not going to happen. I have more evidence and proof that it's going to. So having that mentality kind of helps you push on and be optimistic, but also realize every step you're taking is in that direction of making it better and giving you a better mental model to make decisions in the future.
Well, that's fantastic advice. Well, Josh, thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for telling the creation story of Referral Rock.
Thanks for having me again, Noah.
And this concludes another chapter of Code Story. Code Story is hosted and produced by Noah Labhart. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting app of your choice. And when you get a chance, leave us a review. Both things help us out tremendously. And thanks again for listening.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now boarding Group A. Please have your boarding passes ready to scan. If your phone is cracked, old, or was chewed up by your Chihuahua travel companion, please refrain from holding up the line. Instead, go to Verizon and trade in any phone in any condition from one of their top brands for the new Samsung Galaxy S25 Plus with Galaxy AI and a watch and tab on any plan. Only on Verizon.
With new line on my plan. Service plan required for watch and tab. Additional terms apply. See Verizon.com for details.